Hello, I'm Brigantia, Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Saturday and welcome to Wicca 202. This week we're going to discuss honoring ancestors. Every pagan path, without exception, has something to say about giving due deference and respect to one's ancestors. This is a recognition that it took all of those who came before to give us life, and it is a recognition that we are all links in the greater chain of life, and that the task of each generation is to produce and launch the next. I cannot overemphasize the importance of this fundamental pagan idea. Even the most solitary practitioner is not atomized. They stand upon the shoulders of every pagan who came before them, and they are part of the foundation of pagans to come. The more this understanding seeps into the brain, the more it becomes clear that paganism and witchcraft is nothing to treat flippantly or to take lightly. This isn't a buffet where we just pick and choose what we put on our plates at random with little consequence. It matters what we believe and what we do and why. It also matters whether or not our spirituality has enough substance and internal logic to provide us with a cohesive and integrated worldview and understanding of the spiritual function of the universe. It also means that we have a duty to practice our beliefs, not just believe them, but practice them, and to pass on what we have learned. So, who are our ancestors? The most literal sense of the term ancestor refers to those who are literally in our genetic line. Now, some pagans will ignore living relatives they don't get along with, any Christians in their family history, and essentially only count distant pagan ancestors. But I would like to discourage this train of thought, because regardless of whether or not we like an ancestor or if we agree with any of their spiritual ideas, they are still part of the fabric of our family. To discount them is to dishonor all of the family. So no matter what sort of person they were or are or what they believed, we still share their blood. And if they hadn't passed on that legacy, we wouldn't even exist. So there is cause for gratitude. Even if we can give them nothing else, the fact that they led to our own life, that is something. Now, when it comes to the attempt to exorcise Christian ancestors from our consciousness, not only is that irrational and disrespectful for reasons already stated, but it ignores the reality that the vast majority of the time throughout all of human history, people tended to have the religions that they were taught as children. It wasn't something that they sat down, thought about it, compared and contrast every known religion known to man. It's just it was what they were taught, and there was nothing more to it. It is largely a modern phenomenon of people changing their religions at all, let alone frequently or with so little social consequence. There's an argument that we should cut our Christian ancestors, who never knew any other faith, a little bit of slack. I mean, after all, that they were acting in accordance with the only thing that we knew. It doesn't mean that we have to feel at odds with them, particularly if we're talking about people who have been long dead for centuries. If you are focusing all of your energy to be angry with people who have long since passed through the veil, may actually be in a new incarnation, you should really be looking at your own priorities as a person and asking yourself, where is that particular rationality coming from and why? Now, cultural ancestry is another aspect to consider. Humans are both individuals and members of groups, and groups of people create a variety of traditions and a way of doing things. This forms a major part of our heritage. From traditional forms of dress to art forms, music, dance, architecture, customs and holidays, and stories, it all weaves together as a larger culture in which people find mutual connection and belonging. It is true that many pagan customs and traditions were co-opted many centuries ago, and they were adapted for Christian purposes. And granted, that is an intensely annoying state of affairs. But, because that happened, it did allow for some degree of preservation, even if it had a Christian overlay. And it is a starting place for our own research to start to peel back the external Christian influence and try to rediscover the pagan meaning of things. And either way, it's all a part of our cultural background. And if we're going to talk about the importance of tradition, then that means practicing traditions and spending perhaps a little less time judging them. Spiritual ancestry is the third aspect of this concept. Where do the ideas and the gods we believe in come from? Those who perpetuated these ideas and the gods themselves are also our forebearers. Now, while we may have no blood relation or possibly even a cultural relation to someone who brought pagan ideas into the modern age or who continues to teach them, but because we have benefited from it, because it has been part of our journey as a spiritual person, a connection is still formed. And when it comes to the gods themselves, our myths openly outline how we are descended of those deities, at least in some sense of the term. Now, we don't fully understand how that works or whether it's literal, symbolic, or some combination of the two, but we are in a familial relationship with the gods. And the idea of family and how it binds people to physically and spiritually, that is the connective tissue of paganism. Spiritual communities that come together for ritual and worship can be quite tight-knit because they are creating a sense of family amongst themselves. It's all about healthy human bonds. So, how can we show honor to our ancestors? To start with, study their wisdom and then apply it in our own lives. I cannot overemphasize, this feels like it's really something that needs to be hammered home quite a bit lately. It's not enough to know something, it needs to actually be done and affect our behavior. Otherwise, the task is left, incomplete. So, when it comes to the wisdom of our pagan ancestors, we can begin with the cultural common proverbs that have still survived to this day, because this is everyday living wisdom that parents have passed down to their children for centuries. How we live our daily lives is infinitely more important and meaningful than big dramatic occasions or, major events in our spiritual lives. It's the day to day because it forms patterns of behavior, including spiritual patterns, and that creates an anchor in life, far more so than any dramatic revelation that we might experience. As amazing as such an experience can be, that is not going to compose the level of normal in our spiritual practice. And spirituality, it isn't always about uncovering some previously forgotten esoteric secret carefully hidden through the ages known only to the elect. In fact, I think most of the pursuits who are focused on that kind of knowledge, particularly when it comes at the expense of daily living, improved behavior, practical spirituality, I think it's an exercise in vanity. And it makes people vulnerable to falling prey to charlatans who are promising to unveil the mystical secrets of the universe. For a price, of course. And it even makes that person vulnerable to missing the entire point of religion and spirituality and eventually becoming a charlatan themselves. Our ancestors cared about providing for the family, protecting the community, and gaining the favor of the gods. It was simple, straightforward, and honest. Wisdom was found in living life well, in living life fully, not in becoming an obnoxious know-it-all who's more interested in showing off how smart they are rather than doing anything useful. They were practical people. So we should put traditions, spiritual and cultural, into practice. I mean, as it turns out, having a hospitable house, keeping family traditions alive, celebrating holidays, cultural, spiritual, secular even, and being a member of a community and learning how to live with each other human beings actually does matter. And just to be clear, I am not talking about people trying to live beyond their means. As always, we should attempt to conduct our affairs in a spirit of reasonableness. But this is about participation, not making excuses or being lazy or leaving it for someone else to get done. Life is not a spectator sport, and it's worthwhile to go to some trouble to be an active participant in life. This is what makes the difference between a living culture and a dead culture. Are people still coming together for common traditions and celebrations? As the inheritors of a legacy, we should play our part in keeping that all alive. And of course, we should teach the next generation. We should leave something worthwhile behind us. This is where duty and responsibility comes into play. Because while our personal spiritual journey is all about us, our journey as a member of the larger pagan community is shared. It isn't just about ourselves, and we should build something for the pagans who follow us to have after we shed our own mortal coil. And of course, this begins with your own children. Parents have the right and they have the responsibility to teach their children about spirituality. And this can be done without indoctrination or trying to choose their religion for them. Ultimately, children will decide when they become adults what path, if any, they want to follow. But they should understand what their parents believe, why they believe it, and how it's practiced. We should also be part of a pagan community. And if in the course of being part of that community, we encounter newcomers who have questions, then we should share their viewpoint. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big involved thing. Someone asks your opinion, so give it to them. Give them something to think about and let yourself be available to discuss the ins and outs of that idea. Maybe what you say will strike a chord with them, maybe not, but it is mutually beneficial to have the conversation in the first place. And of course, consider reaching out to a broader audience. Whether you choose to write a book or start a YouTube channel, just consider the possibility of sharing your journey and passing on your insights on the public level. Now, until such time as we have a more pagan-centric society, the internet is the best tool we have to conduct pagan education. You don't have to be perfect, you don't have to know everything, just be sincere. So, homework for October 22nd through October 29th. Number 1, how much do you know about your ancestry, genetically, culturally, and spiritually? Make a point to learn something new today. 2, is there a part of your ancestry that makes you uncomfortable? Journal about why this is and what may have influenced you to want to distance yourself from it. Can you find anything redeeming about this part of your ancestry? Really give it a think. And 3, one day, you too will become an ancestor, either through your children or as being part of a culture or on the spiritual level. Now, here's the kicker. What kind of ancestor do you want to be? And is anything about your path putting you in that direction? Are you building that kind of legacy? Or are you not? So, lots to think about this week. If you want to have any further discussions, let me know in the comment section below. Or much more better would be to come visit us on Gilded. There's a link to join our server in the description box. It's called Blackbird's Brew. And the nice thing about the server is that Gilded allows for real-time back and forth conversations. So if you're really wanting to get into some deeper ideas, that's probably the ideal place to do it. So I hope you'll see us soon. But that'll do it for now, and I will see you next time. Bye.